Hello everyone, this is Leah Love and we are here with Dashika Wells of VineWorks Marketing, and this is a bad girl, y'all. So today she's going to tell us a little bit about her company, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty and the meat of today.
Awesome. Hello, and thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm excited. Thank you so much again for having me on the show. So excited, such an honor to be here. As a thank you, I just had a small little gift I wanted to give to you. This is something we give to all of our clients, but we made this one special for you.
Thank you.
So I can get into talking about what's actually in that little goodie bag, or goodie mug, if you will, later on in the show.
Wonderful. So tell us, how long have you been in business and what all do you do with your business?
Oh my goodness, so I've been in business about 3 years, well actually just over 3 years. We just hit our 3-year anniversary at the end of May, so yay for us. We started obviously here in Akron, and now we serve people all across the country, so that's a real blessing. But going into business, I kind of discovered my way through helping others. I actually started with freelancing with friends, doing some work with friends and also family. And then through that, I realized my talents and decided to go ahead and go into business for myself.
So she went into business for herself, another fellow entrepreneur, which is really, I think, one of the scariest things at times that you can experience is going into business for yourself. So let's rewind 3 years ago, and you're like, all right, I'm just gonna go out and do it. Like, what were you feeling? What was that thought process?
It was crazy. It was scary. It was probably one of the most vulnerable periods of my life, because starting a business, you have so much, obviously you have this passion, this thing that you want to kind of get out of you. But then at the same time, you have a lot of responsibility to your audience, to your customers, to your family. It can be a huge sacrifice depending on what the dynamics are of your financial life or your home life and things like that. So for me, it was this kind of giant ball of all of that mixed in. I was in school. I have 2 children, hi Roman and Delaney. And then embarking upon this journey was like, it was life-changing. I knew it would be. I knew it would be a sacrifice for me. Thank goodness my family was very gracious with supporting me through it. My kids were very, very understanding when mommy was at the table crunching numbers or whatever it was that I had to do. But it was exciting too. Mostly exciting because I knew that I had something that I could contribute to the world. Most importantly, small businesses. That's where I started, servicing really small businesses, micros and startups, and helping them achieve success through marketing and educating them on the importance of marketing and how it does impact your bottom line, how it can have a positive impact, and how it can have a negative impact if you choose not to market your business.
Now, marketing and branding, you don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur. Even if you're going into an interview, you're marketing yourself. So whether you're working for yourself or a company, I really felt like this topic was important because people are constantly selling themselves.
Absolutely.
So we hear these terms, marketing and branding. What's the difference between those?
Okay, so branding is how you are perceived by others. Marketing is your intentional efforts to make your product, yourself, or your service perceived by others in a certain way. So your brand is, if I'm, for example, Coca-Cola. When I think Coca-Cola, I think a nice crisp soda. I think it's going to be cold. It's going to kind of catch me in the back of my throat, which is what I want if I'm going for a Coke. It's going to come in a red can. It's everywhere. I can find a t-shirt and those sorts of things. Like, that's branding. I think of longevity. Marketing, though, is you making a conscious effort, being very intentional about how you place your product on the market, about who you connect your product to if you're doing cross-branding and things like that, how you are seen in that light, and really taking the time to strategize. It's really strategy. It's an art. It's really taking the time to know your customers or your audience if you're more social media based and so forth, finding what their likes and dislikes are and speaking to those things and putting your products or yourself or your services in the place where you're likely to hit that audience, which is your target audience.
Okay, so going back again to year one or day one, you have 0 clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you know that there was a market for the business that you wanted to create? And how did you go about finding that market?
Gotcha. I started out the gate very, very aggressive. Aggressive in a good way. But when I started out, I did not have a client list per se, but I did have work history from freelance stuff that I did. So that was a really good thing for me. Probably about 18 months prior to me going into business, I started doing little things with businesses of my friends that were blooming and things like that. So I had sort of a portfolio that I could present. I really align myself with organizations like SCORE, SBDC. I utilize those as resources. The Akron Urban League, if you're watching afar, there may be an urban league or something similar in your area. I went in and I talked to people. I talked to other professionals. My business idea, my strategy, I went over it and over it and over it again, until I was able to weed out the things that maybe that initially I thought would work, but over time I realized wouldn't work. Or I should say, and talking to others who had more experience in business and in marketing, but I talked to people with diverse backgrounds also, so I can get a full-bodied approach to what will work, what won't work, unbiased opinions. I don't want to just talk to friends or family, those sorts of things. And they really helped me. And sometimes it was uncomfortable because I'm like married to this idea and this thing is going to work. Mm-hmm. And but those people, I have to thank every one of them because they helped me narrow it down to a plan or a business model that would actually work and be viable.
You said unbiased opinion, mm-hmm. as well as hearing the constructive criticism.
Yes.
A lot of times you get so passionate and you're like, everybody needs this, everybody wants it. But at the same time, you really have to listen to people, especially your customer base, because they're going to tell you if they want it or if they don't.
Absolutely.
And so that's what's going to be the big difference of if you're going to stay in business or not. So one of the other things is, again, we're at this table and we're trying to figure out how we're going to market ourselves. Mm-hmm. How do you figure out what you even bring to the table?
Oh my goodness. Again, going back to the beginning, I had like this myriad of services and products that I was going to offer, right? I had, all of these things like I'm going to do this. I am going to be your one-stop marketing shop, period. I quickly learned that I can grow to be that, but that's not the mindset to have going into business. You really want to have 1, 2, maybe 3 things that you do very, very well and exploit those things. Share those things like crazy with your audience. Give stuff out as testers, get feedback from other people. Find out those nooks and crannies and things that you can improve kind of on the back end before you go to mass market with all of this stuff. And over time, you'll realize what your customers really like, the things that they're coming back for over and over again, the things that they can't live without. And then also they'll begin to give you suggestions too on, hey, do you have this or do you do this also? And then after you get so many requests and things like that, that's when you know that your market or your penetration in that market is growing. And then you can kind of dive into other areas and test those out as well.
Okay, so the big thing is making yourself different and making yourself stand out. What are some ways that businesses as well as individuals can really set themselves apart from the competition, quote unquote?
Sure. That's where kind of branding and marketing go together, because for me and many other entrepreneurs that are blooming and those like yourself that have been in business for a while, you go wherever you go, you represent your brand. You do. No matter who you're talking to, where you are, your social media presence, and so forth. So making that as pristine as possible, being human, being authentic, but at the same time representing your brand with pride. And in addition to that, think about the small things. Like for myself, there are large marketing companies, corporations in the area. And so one might say, well, why would I come to you when I can go to this person? Price point is not necessarily always the driver for someone's business. Usually not, actually. But making myself or pulling on some of those things that might be construed as weaknesses, well, when you come to me, you talk to me. You don't have to go through a secretary. You don't have to go through, a gatekeeper and those sorts of things. If you have a need, it's resolved, or we find a solution for it. If you have something that needs to be done in an urgent or timely manner, you're coming right to the CMO. You know, you don't have to go through this whole chain of command and those sorts of things. So sometimes what might seem like a weakness to a smaller business are really strengths. In addition to that, just being consistent, consistently delivering, holding your promises no matter what. That's what we hold true to ourselves at VineWorks. It's just what we do, period. If we say we're going to meet a timeline, or if we're going to provide a product or service, we do it. We deliver consistently, and we deliver on time.
One of the things you said was that price point isn't necessarily a driving factor. What are some of the more common driving factors?
Value. I'm more interested in value than I am price. Most consumers are more interested in value than they are price. If you go out to a car lot per se, you might have a certain budget in your mind, and when you get there, the car dealer is going to ask you, what are you looking to spend? And you're probably not going to tell him or her, but you have this idea in the back of your head, and let's just say it's $10,000. But you see a car that's like 15, and that is your dream car, then you're going to make it happen for that car, period. On the other hand, if it's cheaper than what you expect it to pay, you're very leery of that. As a consumer, you're like, well, why is it so cheap? What's wrong with it? So that might be another interesting note. A lot of times, entrepreneurs or business owners come into the market with a product and they say, well, we're going to come in cheaper than the other guys, and that's going to drive business to us. Sometimes, most times, that can scare businesses or opportunities away, because people are reluctant to take that opportunity. They automatically develop the mindset, well, what's wrong? And then if there are larger organizations or corporations that are competing with you in the area, they can afford to lower their price to drive you out of the market. And you're a new guy or a new woman into business, it's much easier for them to take over your area of business or your market of business by driving you out with price than it is for you to take over theirs.
Okay, so I'm a checklist person,
Mm-hmm.
and I have sat down, I got my brand together, I have my marketing together, I found my market that I want to go into, my product is good, and I go out and it ends up being an epic failure. I have nobody. How do you rebound, and what do you tell somebody who thinks that this perception is that if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is going to come and it's going to hit just like that?
Right. I will tell anybody, that business is not a science, it's an art. There are so many variables. You have to, going into business, going into entrepreneurship, you have to assume that there will be risk involved. We would like to think that we're never going to fall on our face, or we're never going to have that product or that idea that doesn't take hold or doesn't sell. But the reality is it might, and sometimes it does. But use those as an opportunity to go back, especially if it's something you're truly passionate about, which you should be if you're going into entrepreneurship. Go back and study, well, where did we go wrong? Or what could we have improved upon? Who could we have partnered with to make this thing go forward? Sometimes we take on the mindset that I have to do this. I have to wear this cape and be Superman or Superwoman and bring this thing to market. But there are so many other people sometimes that are already aligned that can be so great for your brand. That's cross-branding, where you partner with someone else and you bring the strengths together. Their brand grows, your brand grows, and you have this kind of synergy going on to where it's a well-oiled machine then. You can pull in their strengths and they can pull in yours and make great things happen. So that's kind of how we operate in VineWorks too. We consider ourselves to be your marketing department outside of your business. So we're not coming in making radical changes. We're not coming in, saying this absolutely has to happen this way or that way. We're not that company. We're the company you come to say, hey, let's work together to make this thing grow. And then we come in with our ideas. We come in and share our strategies. We work together to execute those and make sure they're comfortable for the business owner or for the CEO or whoever that happens to be within that organization, to make sure that we're not overstepping the culture of your organization or those things that you hold true to your organization, but we're kind of blending to make it stronger and greater.
So we hear a lot of people talking about vision boards, setting goals, and setting expectations. How do you know that A, you're on the right path, and B, that you've set a realistic expectation, and how do you go from there?
Sure. Well, I'm a woman of faith. I have absolutely crazy faith. You might even call it delusional faith. I test God and I trust God. And that's my personal way. But I say whatever your process is, vision boards are very, very helpful. I actually started that going into this year with a really good friend of mine, and we did this whole kind of workshop where we sat down and did this vision board. And before the first quarter of the year was up, I was reaching out to that person saying, hey, I've checked off like 75% of my vision board already for this year. So dream big, have big vision, but also have motivation. That's the key to it too, is having that motivation to drive that vision, to see that vision come to pass. You can't, you don't want to have this vision or have this passion about doing something and sit on it. Because sitting idle, time goes by, you don't want to have that resentment of not acting. Understand that, there are going to be some risk involved, and those can be great and wonderful learning opportunities. I've learned some of the greatest things from some of the mistakes that I've made, and also trust your customers, trust your market. They will speak to you, they will tell you what they want, how they want it, and really, really take hold of positive feedback and criticism, because sometimes that can really be a saver and a driver for your business as well.
All right, so in our final few minutes, what are some of your favorite apps and maybe your favorite book that you liked with business or personal development?
Oh my goodness, I'm a nerd. So some of my favorite books, actually, my college books, I still hold on to them.
Really?
So yeah, I'm still very, I
sold those.
Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm going to get every penny out of these books. So psychology, I would say that especially in marketing, look into psychology books. Any book that you can find on buying patterns, buying behavior, just kind of the mindset of people and how they operate. It'll give you insight into colors. If you're looking to start a business or you're drafting a logo, what color should my logo be? Well, if you're going into food service, it probably should have some kind of red or yellow in it, because those colors speak to hunger. If you're going into yeah, they do. If you're going into
Snickers has that little red in it.
I'm telling you, I'm the McDonald's, Burger King, they all have those colors. Even Chipotle is more subdued, but they have the maroon.
Yeah.
Things like that. If you're going into finance, it's probably going to be or marketing. Let's partner, not compete. But if you're going into something in that area, you want to stick to like greens and oranges that exudes happiness and growth and those sorts of things. In addition to that, what was the other question? Books and apps. I'm not big on apps. However, I do stay up to date on social media. So, and that's also a major driver in our business. But I like to follow industry leaders in marketing on social media, Instagram.
So who came to mind real quick, industry leader that you follow?
Oh my gosh, well, I told you I'm a nerd. So I follow this guy who does all these tips and tricks for Excel. Because I'm always doing my own spreadsheets and things like that. But he also has a whole lot of cool little marketing tips and things like that. I can't think of his name right now. Don't put me on the spot. I'm sorry, but I'll follow up with that. I'll put a link onto the feed. But yeah, I just follow industry experts on social media. Blavity, I love them. Everything they do. They're not necessarily marketers, but they're all things great. So they started out being this little tiny group in college, actually, not my school. I forget where they went. But they started out being this little tiny group, and they would meet kind of in their student union and just talk. And then they decided to start this brand where they just talked about kinds of all things, pop culture, food, and all this stuff. Now they have this big giant network in New York. They're based out of New York now, where they have like a food and pop culture channel. They have a fashion channel. They have, with YouTube and all kinds of other platforms. They're amazing. So I love the way that they grew their brand from this small group of people that were just friends and grew it into this powerhouse that is really, really taking pop culture, food, and all those things by storm in New York and elsewhere. As well, I follow fashion like Hey Fran, hey, hey girl. I kind of keep a very broad approach so that I have experience or at least some insight into various areas of business. Because with marketing, I'm servicing people across all industries, so I can't kind of stay in my own tunnel. I have to really be versed on what's going on in the world around me so I can better serve them.
I think that's a great point, is to make sure that you are definitely a well-rounded individual if you're going to service a lot of different individuals.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having
I appreciate
me.
you coming.
Absolutely.
So how can they reach you if they want to have you market for their business and make them fabulous?
Absolutely. You can reach me online at VineWorksMarketing.com. You can reach me on Facebook at VineWorks Marketing. You can give us a call, 234-738-1209. We're at VineWorks, we always say greatness is in the works, and we're looking to make great things happen for you. Thank you.
Great.
Awesome.
So if you guys want to be great, be sure to contact Dashika at VineWorks Marketing. And if you would like to have your business or organization featured on Beauty Time, you can contact me, Leah Love. And we look forward to seeing you next month. Have a blessed weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.